Thank you all. So this talk, I promise you this talk's about AI. I promise you. So I run a foundation which helps people come together and agree on standards to decarbonize the digital sector. So I describe myself as somebody who's in the field of getting people to agree on topics. That's the kind of field that I'm in. But recently we've started to use AI. We started to use AI to help people find common ground. And honestly, the results are really incredible so far. We're not the only one. In this polarized world, there is a vibrant field of academia which is exploring how we can use AI to bring people together, look past their differences, and find common, make collective decisions. I wanted to kind of take you through a talk which explains both my thinking on the topic and also gives you a bit of a flavor of the conversation that's happening out there right now. We're going to go deep into a few topics that seem pretty out there and unrelated. About halfway through, you're going to be sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? What the hell is going on? But then we're going to land. We're going to find ourselves on solid ground again. And at the end, I'm going to try and tie all the threads together and make sense of it all. So we're going to get to AI, but we're going to take a long journey which starts in 234 BC in Athens in Greece. So you are an initiate in the Eleusinian mysteries. Your family has a long history with the Eleusinian mysteries. Your parents took it, your grandparents took it. As far as you can remember, your family's been related to the Eleusinian mysteries. It's a mystery cult that lasted about 2,000 years, based in Athens in Greece. It's September right now. Not really, but it's September right now. And every year in September, the initiates take part in something called the Greater Eleusinian Mysteries. You've been preparing for this moment for months. You've fasted. You've bathed in the sea to purify yourself. You've abstained from various taboo foods and drinks. You've performed the ritual sacrifice of a pig. And now you've taken a 14-mile pilgrimage along the sacred way from Athens to Eleusis. And along the way, as you approach the final destination, masked men line a bridge and insult you in a ritualistic humbling before the sacred experience. And then you've reached the destination, the telestrion, the great initiation hall at Eleusis, and you're about to experience something that will change your life forever. What was it? What happened inside the telestrion? We don't know. The Eleusinian mysteries were like the Fight Club of antiquity. First rule of the Eleusinian mysteries is you do not talk about the Eleusinian mysteries. The second rule of the Eleusinian mysteries is you do not talk about the Eleusinian mysteries. And it wasn't just social convention. It was the laws of Athens imposed the death penalty on anybody who revealed the secrets. But even far beyond the laws of Athens, people kept the secret spontaneously. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. For nearly 2,000 years, people kept the secret. What was the secret? Well, who participated in the Eleusinian mysteries? This wasn't some fringe cult. This was the intellectual and spiritual elite of the ancient world. We're talking about some of the greatest minds in civilization. Pythagoras, who If you research Pythagoras, Pythagoras was a wild, wild dude. So Pythagoras, Plato, whose ideas shaped all of Western civilization, Cicero, the great Roman orator and statesman. This is what Cicero had to say about it. Though Athens brought forth numerous divine things, yet she never created anything nobler than those sublime mysteries, through which we became gentler, and have advanced from a barbarous and rustic life to a more civilized one, so that we not only live more joyfully, but die with a better hope. What was the Eleusinian mysteries? We know they drank something. We know they drank something before the mysteries. Ancient sources tell us that a special potion was drunk. It was called a kykeon. We don't really know the formula. The only reference is in something called the Homeric hymn, which says that the main ingredient is something called sacred barley. Sacred barley, we'll get back to that later. Mixed with water and mint. Okay? We do know the impact on the participants. So they would come away wonderstruck by what they had lived through. And according to some accounts, they were never the same person as before. And here's a quote which might explain why the secret was kept. Words could not convey to strangers the wonders of the night, and there would always be the danger that the effort to explain would be met with mockery that would seem to the initiate sacrilegious. In other words, words are useless. Pretty good mint tea, yeah? Yeah. So what can we guess about what they actually drank? There's a fascinating book on the Eleusinian mysteries called The Road to Eleusis. It's written by 3 researchers, an ethnomycologist, a classicist, and a chemist. The chemist was Albert Hofmann, which, for those of you who don't know, he's the gentleman who invented LSD completely by accident. And he created through an extract of something called the ergot fungus. So here's Hofmann's theory. Ergot fungus grows on barley and other grains. So barley is something that's grown all around Eleusis. And when ergot got into bread, it caused something called ergotism, which is a really, really horrible way to die, a really terrible way to die. So everybody was always on the lookout for ergot contamination on barley, and they're always trying to get rid of it. And he discovered that through a basic process with water, you could actually try and extract out or separate out the poisonous alkaloids from the hallucinogenic ones. So his thesis is that they'd actually, in an attempt to try and get rid of the ergotism, they discovered an LSD analog. And that's basically what they were consuming in the Eleusinian mysteries. So even though Hofmann is talking about LSD from ergot, LSD is part of a family of psychedelic compounds. I told you we're going on a journey. We're going to go on a journey. Family of psychedelic compounds, and they all share a chemical structure. They're all cousins of serotonin. Psilocybin is another one of the family. That's what you find in magic mushrooms. DMT is one of the ones I personally have the most experience in, since it's a core component of ayahuasca. I've taken a lot of ayahuasca. I talk about it I'm not coming out. I talk about it very openly. I've written a lot about it. You can find it on my blog and other places. And the reason that DMT is the most interesting psychedelic compound, I think, is because it's produced inside the body endogenously. What does that mean? It means that your bodies right now are creating DMT. All of you right now are creating DMT inside your bodies. This is a great research paper, the neurochemical and neurophysiological effects of intravenous administration of N,N-dimethyltryptamine in rats. It's a good page turner, this one. And what this paper initially discovered, which was really interesting, is that it was measuring neurotransmitter levels in live rats. And they discovered that actually DMT is produced at the same levels as dopamine and serotonin. So your bodies produce DMT at the same levels as other neurotransmitters in your body. Your body does not normally generate chemicals that it doesn't need, right? So DMT is produced in our bodies at the same level as those. So some researchers believe, like what is the purpose of DMT? So some researchers believe, and I agree with them, that it has something to do with consciousness. Something to do with consciousness. DMT is a consciousness expanding drug. That's the experience that people feel when they take it. So we're now going to dive into consciousness theory. Okay, stay with me. Stay with me. Okay. When it comes to consciousness theory, this is a quote I love from Patricia Churchland. Theories of consciousness are like toothbrushes. Everyone has one, and no one wants to use anyone else's. You could probably replace theories of consciousness with JavaScript frameworks, right, like toothbrushes. There's a recent kind of meta-analysis which showed there's about 350 peer-reviewed theories of consciousnesses in the academic literature, and they were like, why have we got so many? I would say this broadly falls into two camps, consciousness theories. Consciousness is either an emergent property of biology. It's an emergent property. Like you have these things called brains, and as soon as a brain reaches a certain size, it's conscious, right? That's an emergent property of biology. There's other theories of consciousness show that consciousness is not an emergent property of biology. It's something else. It's a field. It's like a gravitational field. It's something that always exists around us. I think one of the best evidence that it's not an emergent property of biology is near-death experiences. How did we get here? Near-death experiences. So there are many cases of people who were brain dead, who were clinically deceased, who then came back afterwards, near-death experience, and reported that they were conscious during that experience. And it wasn't just stuff made up at the end, because they could actually recount who was in the room, what was said. So there's many, many examples of this, and that produces a really wonderful paradox, because if consciousness was an emergent property, a byproduct of biology, then when the biology is dead, you shouldn't be conscious, right? And so the fact that there are examples where it's not true is the biggest hint that consciousness is something else. It's a first-order property of the universe, right? Now, my current favorite consciousness theory is analytic idealism. So I'm not going to do this theory justice right now, but this theory basically has the premise that there is one universal consciousness, one in the entire universe. But being one consciousness doesn't really leave much room for experience. If all you had in this whole universe was just the thoughts in your head and nothing else, it's a pretty terrible place to be. So there's a natural inclination for consciousnesses to bud off from each other. So the one universal consciousness buds off other consciousnesses, that buds off other consciousnesses. I am a budding off of a higher consciousness. The parts of my body, the cells in my body, are buddings off of my consciousness. I don't think it's completely crazy. I mean, half the people in this world believe in God. God could be the higher consciousness that you budded off from. And there's those people out there, and there's researchers out there, not many of them, that believe that DMT is a neurotransmitter, and its purpose is to help communicate between the consciousnesses, between your consciousness, your higher consciousnesses, your lower consciousnesses. And what's the message that you get from the consciousnesses? Like, what is what's being communicated out? Look, spiritual teachings, psychedelic awakenings, all point to the same thing: a sense of oneness, a sense of connectivity, emerging with a higher consciousness, a realization that we're all kind of in this thing together. Unity is a term that comes out. So, did I not do the rest of the animation? Right. So what happens when for 2,000 years you have the brightest minds in antiquity take psychedelics. When you give people that feeling of and sensation of unity generation after generation, the thing I can't get out of my head is that the reason we all know about Athens also is that it's a birthplace of democracy, right? I think they're 100% connected. I don't think we would have democracy if it wasn't for the Eleusinian mysteries. And it didn't happen overnight. It took hundreds and hundreds of years for democracy to slowly form one idea after another. And don't confuse Athenian democracy with what we have today. They had no elected officials. They had no political class. They had an assembly where roughly 30,000 people could go, 6,000 would regularly meet, and they would participate directly, not through representation, directly. Anyone could attend if you were a man and not a slave, right? But anyone could attend other than that. Sounds crazy, right? 30,000 people all in a room, like shouting. Who set the agenda? Well, they did have a council of 500 people that, again, were not elected or were randomly selected from the population. They could only keep there for 1 year, and they could never be in the council again. And they would sit there and choose the agenda, and, oh, so-and-so you get to talk, so-and-so you get to talk, so it can't be manipulated. This is what's called a participatory, a deliberative democracy. No political class, no professional politicians. The goal wasn't to elect someone to make decisions for you. It was for citizens to come together and to deliberate on issues themselves. Political scientists call the Athenian version of democracy radical democracy. You know, that's the crazy democracy. We couldn't possibly have that now. What we have is what's called representative democracy. We elect people who represent us in Parliament. We call those people members of Parliament, MPs. We elect them. We don't engage in deliberation on our issues. We couldn't possibly. We're not intelligent enough to deliberate on these issues ourselves. We elect people who deliberate on those issues on our behalf. We hope, dream, and pray that they make true in their promises and they represent us and not other interests. So you might say, Asim, that's not true. What about referendums? We do participate as people. Let's take a look at Brexit. Just want to casually mention. So I casually mentioned, we've landed. All right, we're talking about Brexit now. It's all good, it's all safe. All right, Brexit. So in political theory, what this is described as is there's two preferences, and we're choosing a preference. That's really what we're doing in democracy. We're all choosing our preference together. But I would say democracy is us coming together to decide our preference. Democracy isn't putting an X in a box and choosing something. There's a huge power in setting the agenda, huge power in setting the agenda. We have a position in the foundation, it's called chair of a working group. They have no more power than any other member of a working group. The only power they have is setting the agenda, what gets discussed in a meeting. People think that's a very powerful right to have, is setting the agenda. For Brexit, the agenda was set for us. Right, we had two options. Do you want to stay? Do you want to leave? Do you remember? That was it. No more nuance, no nothing to the agenda. I do this to my kids all the time. All the time. You can brush your teeth before Spidey and his amazing friends or after watching Spidey and his amazing friends. You know, you've got a choice. You've got to vote. But you're brushing your bloody teeth, right? So, let me get into why am I talking about this? So yes, I've spent years now in sustainability, and I run the Green Software Foundation. We're a consortium of 70 member organizations right now, and we kind of come together and we democratically, through consensus, agree on standards to help decarbonize the digital sector. But over the years, I've just come to realize something pretty uncomfortable. Like, it kind of doesn't matter, you know? We consistently prove again and again and again that sustainability is a priority, yet very little happens. And think about AI for a moment, right? Think about AI for a moment. Why are we so scared of it? Why are we so scared of it? I don't think it's the technology itself. I think it's because we don't trust our governments to protect us from the impact of AI, the environmental impact, the societal impact. If we trusted our governments, we wouldn't be worried about it. We would know that they would enact policies and laws and regulations to protect us. We don't have that trust. You can have all the brilliant solutions in the world, but if the process of making and executing collective decisions is corrupted, nothing changes, right? And I'm increasingly convinced the conversations we need to be having is about fixing our democratic institutions so they can actually function in the age of AI, right? What's the solution? Does anybody know how voting actually happens in the parliament in the UK? Does anybody actually know the mechanism of voting? Right? Yeah. So there's when the Speaker of the House wants a vote, he shouts, "Division." And you know, you've probably seen the pictures, there's the two benches, one side and the other side. Underneath both those benches is two corridors, an ayes corridor and a nays corridor. So the MPs stand up, they walk down the stairs, and they choose the yes corridor or the no corridor. In the Brexit vote, there's a famous stories of people who weren't sure which corridor to go down, and somebody grabbed them and jabbed them into the corridor before the door shut, and then they count the number of people in the corridor, and then the Speaker of the House goes, "The ayes have it," and we have this really cute system of government. I mean, I have this magical device, which I can touch. I have all the knowledge of the world. It's this incredible, right? In this little device. And that's the best we can come up with for voting in the UK, right? So before AI, we desperately needed to modernize our democratic institutions. But in the age of AI, they are completely unsuited to deal with the pace of the way things are working. And the field is called digital democracy, as you might guess. There's a vibrant field here. The standout success is, I'd say, Taiwan, if you've not heard about the stuff that Taiwan's been doing. So they've been running kind of nationwide deliberative digital democracy for a decade. And for a decade, the citizens of Taiwan have been coming together and actively shape the policies of the government. They've developed a tool it's an open source tool called Polis, which they use inside the country, and it's open source, so other countries and other places are using it also. I recommend checking it out. Now, Uber was one of their great successes. So in 2016, 17, Uber was starting to get rolled out into Taiwan. There's lots of concerns with the population. So, they didn't have a referendum, yes Uber, no Uber. They had a whole process where they sat down and they figured out what their preferences were, and they came up with these 6 preferences, which then got enacted into laws and policies in Taiwan. But that was before AI. Now with AIs in the mix, it's made something possible that will finally enable us to scale out the Athenian democratic model to the size of entire countries. This is a seminal paper on the subject, generative social choice. I won't go into that paper in particular, but I wanted to just, on a very high level, introduce you to the concept and what's going on. So maybe dispel a knee-jerk assumption of what AI looks like in the democratic process. So this is maybe how we'd imagine democracy works. A and B, leave the EU, stay with the EU. The red dots are people, and you just vote. You vote on the item that you want, and the one that gets the most wins. And I think what people think is happening when we talk about involving AI in the democratic process is the AI chooses for you, right? But that's not at all what's being investigated and discussed. It's something else, something far more interesting. It's about AI being used to parse the voices of the people, their fears, their worries, their concerns, and the people decide the preferences. Not the politicians. The people are deciding the preferences. Right? Then the people vote on their preferences. Okay? The exciting part about AI here is getting rid of the political class. Not getting rid of people's voices. I wanted to walk us through an example, because we now use AI extensively in the foundation in the creation of standards. And I don't want to use that as an example, because I find standards really, really interesting. But I'm not sure if you would like the standards as much as I do. So I thought, let's pick Brexit. Let's go back in time. Let's imagine what might, if we had this technology today, how might we have looked at Brexit and dealt with Brexit at the time. So what would we do? Will we send out a questionnaire, maybe? Okay. Now, questionnaires are usually optimized for the person asking the questions, not for the person answering the questions. When you're trying to do a questionnaire with thousands of people, millions of people, you don't want to get 1 million free text answers, and then someone's, I don't know what to do with this. So typically the questionnaires are oh, out of these 5 options, which would you prefer? Rank this 1 to 5, because you're trying to do averaging, and it's all very fixed questions, fixed answers. But here what we do is we just ask a question, and you just give you some words as your answer. I actually, when we do this a lot, I actually really recommend people not even write out their answers. I get my team, I get everybody who engages, I say, use a voice transcription service and just speak your answer. One thing I've noticed anecdotally is just when we write our answers to things, we self-edit, and we don't really end up telling the truth. When we vocalize it, even including all those, actually, I'm not too sure, actually delete that, we tend to give so much more nuance and information, and the AI is really, really good at pulling out what we wanted to say, right? So that's kind of interesting, and maybe I'm bolding some red things here. Maybe some more nuance would come out of this questionnaire. There's other kind of interesting thing happening. So questionnaires are quite exclusionary. They're quite exclusionary. They demand you, in your response to a questionnaire, to formulate positions and arguments to concrete points, right? That's a questionnaire. If you don't have the language to kind of express your idea in a certain way, you fail to express your point. But some folks in the digital democracy space are exploring the use of storytelling. Because, asking participants to tell a story about a situation. Tell me a story about the environment, how you feel about the environmental impact of websites. Tell me a story about it, right? Everyone can tell a story. Everybody you know can tell a story. I'm telling you a story right now, right? Everybody can tell a story. We're storytelling creatures. And to an AI, there's actually very little difference with whether you give an answer in certain forms of a story versus a more formal question. It's just tokens, and it can extract kind of the same semantics from the token text. But the more important thing, it makes it a lot easier for people to engage in a democratic, deliberative process, because it's just, tell me a story. I've not seen anyone propose this before. I definitely want to experiment with this next year through the foundation, but what if you just had a conversation with an LLM? You start off, you task the LLM with probing your thinking, with really trying to be curious, asking follow-up questions, no judgment, really trying to help you surface your thoughts on a topic, right? It could start off with maybe what matters most to you about the UK's relationship with Europe, and you start off by parroting a talking point you heard from Nigel Farage on a podcast once, and just through prompting, maybe we get to your real worries, your real concerns, You might get a hint to what I think Brexit was all about. right, in all these topics. Again, it's just tokens that feed into an LLM. What we do is we take all those tokens and we ask the LLM, please find now clusterings of preferences, right? We do that in standards, we do it anywhere. What are the clusterings of preferences? And so maybe the LLM generates these 3 preferences. Maybe there's a remain one, but it's more nuanced. It's more nuanced. Maybe there's a leave one, but again, it's more nuanced. The really interesting thing, and this is what people are discovering with the use of AI in these deliberative processes, is it's surfacing new preferences, which nobody thought that would get surfaced. So maybe it would surface the real problem with Brexit. I think Brexit was, you might guess what my feelings what Brexit is. I think it was Brexit was about global financial crisis. I believe it was about that. I believe many felt betrayed and still feel betrayed by the government for, presiding over the bailouts, austerity for years. No one has gone, well, one person's gone to prison, but it has nothing to do with the actual crisis. No one's gone to prison for it at all. And it was seen as a protest vote. Like, I don't know what's going on. I hate it. I just do not know what's going on, but they've just given me this referendum. They want me to vote yes, I'm going to vote no. I think that's what Brexit was all about, right? But with this deliberative process, we'll be able to surface that and be able to surface these preferences. Look, there's lots of problems, right? It's not going to solve everything. I've given this talk, versions of this talk before, and yes, it's got problems, lots and lots of problems. In the sustainability space, we talk about displacement. So wind farms have an environmental impact. They do, they really, really do. Coal plants have an environmental impact. They both do, but one is better than the other. So we'd rather put money into the wind farm and it displaces the coal power plant. So it's got problems, but I think it's better than the existing systems. Yes, it's got AI bias. There's lots of AI bias. But the other bias is a politician talking to his Etonian school buddies and the lobbyists that are surrounding him or her, right? So that's the other bias. Yes, there's manipulation possibilities, but our political systems are being manipulated by other parties as well. Propaganda, populism, demagoguery, it's not going to solve any of those problems. But it's just a better solution than what we have right now. So I believe, you remember the start of the talk? I believe that democracy was a message from our higher consciousnesses. I believe it was guidance on how best to organize ourselves as a society, a message about unity. But democracy is really fragile. It's really, really fragile. It took a lot of LSD and thousands of years to convince humans to even take on the idea of democracy. And it didn't last long, and it failed. Actually, the Athenian model, it completely failed. They made bad decisions. It failed. But for 1,500 years, we went back to our usual oligarchy and monarchies. We've only recently got this thing that is democracy. And the democracy we have today is not the same as the one we had before. We turned participatory democracy into representative democracies. We created the political class we were trying to escape. But even this is under attack. There is a growing movement of people who are so disillusioned by the current democratic system, they are advocating to move to more autocratic ones. And now it sounds like I'm really sounding a crazy alarm bell right now, but I've given this talk, a version of this talk, once before, and it shocked me. There are 4 or 5 people in the audience who came up to me afterwards and specifically argued me with this point. I found it. That was the first moment I was like, there'll be people in this room right now who are, in their heads, actively believing that autocracies is better than a democracy. Countries like El Salvador, if you've not heard of what's going on in El Salvador, it's fascinating. Countries like El Salvador, under the leadership of President Bukele, is happily moving back to an autocracy. Over the last 5 years, they've moved from a fragile democracy to an autocracy. He's got 90% approval rating. He's dismantled every democratic institution there is, and the population is all behind it, right? And they're not wrong. Like, we're very, very close to having 5 PMs in 4 years in the UK. Very, very close. I don't think there's a lot of faith that another PM is going to solve the problems that we have already. But rather than give up on democracy, my argument is that we fix it. Right? We fix it. And if we choose to, AI can hand us the tools to scale true deliberative democracy to everyone. Right. Which leads me back to my title, the title of the talk. Right? So the Athenians had a word for someone who didn't participate in assemblies, who stayed at home instead of engaging in the democratic conversation. They called such a person idios. Right? It originally meant just a private individual, and it evolved into meaning someone ignorant of public affairs. Over time, across Latin, and then French, and then English, it turned into the English word, idiot. So my message to you today is pretty simple. Don't be an idiot. Thank you.